Good to know. All right. Well, we've had Jordan before, and he was fabulous. He taught us about ivermectin, Herbalmectin, and his answer from God on how to help us with COVID. And he's going to talk to us today on iridology. Is that how you?
IRIDOLOgy.
Iridology.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to turn the time over to you.
Okay. So yes, my name is Jordan Gundersen. I'm a Master Herbalist. I'm also a holistic iridologist. I'm the co-author of 2 best-selling books along with my wife. We wrote them together. I'm also the founder of Health Saves. That's our organization. To learn about some of these things, we also help people with getting healthy. And like Colette mentioned, I'm world famous for Herbalmectin.
World famous now.
Yeah, people call it. Once the word got out, it just started spreading. And it's helped a lot of people. It's not a pharmaceutical, it's not a drug, it's something natural that you can put in your body, and it helps detoxify the liver, the kidneys. It helps to eliminate all the bad stuff. My family and I have turned to that whenever we start getting something. We just reach for that, and that seems to work really well for us. So for any kind of cough, cold, sinus problem, that's usually the first thing we go to. But today I wanted to talk about what your eyes...
Can I ask you the name of your 2 books?
Yes. The first one was The Word of Wisdom, Hope, Healing, and the Destroying Angel. I have some copies here. The other one was about my wife's health journey story overcoming Crohn's disease. It's called Curing Crohn's. We just ran out of print of those ones, but they are available on Amazon. So today I wanted to talk about our eyes and what that has to do with our health. So a lot of people know about iridology in some form or another, but I just wanted to give a little more color and clarification as to what it is. First off, so it is pronounced iridology in the English language. In other languages, such as Spanish, or maybe even British English, it's often pronounced iridology, but in English, in American English, we say iridology because we're looking at the iris. In other languages, iris, but in English, American English, it's iris. So it is pronounced iridology. It is the science and practice of analyzing the iris, where you're looking for genetic and accumulated signs of weakness and or strength. This is what Hippocrates had to say. He was probably one of the first known people to practice iridology. He said, inquiries are to be made and symptoms are to be noted, those in the whole countenance, those on the body, and those in the eyes. So Hippocrates is the father of medicine, and he was the first one to say, when the doctor is treating someone, he should look at the whole person. You need to observe them and really know that patient, and specifically what's going on inside the eye, because the eye will give some clues as to what is going on. Hippocrates was a very great holistic healer. They say that he's the father of medicine, but the form of medicine that he practiced is far different than the form that's practiced today. Hippocrates was an herbalist. He used natural remedies. He used water cures with lots of his patients. And I believe the patients that he worked with, the people that he worked with on the island, they all lived to be like over 100 years old. And they had great health when he was their doctor. Iridology was actually used as an official diagnostic tool in the United States by medical doctors in the first half of the 20th century. So up until about the mid-1900s, that's when it went away. It also is still used as a diagnostic tool in other countries. So for example, in Russia, you have to be a medical doctor to practice iridology. In Germany, it's pretty similar. Germany is one of the big pioneers of iridology. They do a lot with it over there. But this was a quote from a medical doctor here around 1919 is when he said this. he said the regular school of medicine, meaning the allopathic form of doctors and medicine, as a body, has ignored and will ignore this science because it discloses the fallacy of their favorite theories and practices, and because it reveals, unmistakable, the dire results of chronic drug poisoning and ill-advised operations. So in the early 1900s, the pharmaceutical industry was starting to take off, and he's had this to say. I'll leave it at that. So when it comes to the eyes, they are connected to a lot of different systems in the body. Most notably the brain. Obviously, your eyes are like the receiving end of a computer. It's like the camera of a computer, and then it processes, your brain processes everything that your eyes see. But in the brain, your hypothalamus, your pituitary, and your pineal gland are also connected to the eyes. And those three endocrine glands control a lot of the regulation that goes on in your body with the endocrine system as a whole, but also other various functions throughout the body. They're kind of responsible for keeping you in balance. So they're receiving inputs and they're telling other parts of your body to do certain things. They're also directly connected to the sympathetic nervous system as well as the spinal cord. So when we take a look at all the things that all these are responsible for, your eyes have access to a lot of information that's going on. In the New Testament, Christ said that the light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. Now obviously we know that what he's talking about here with your eye being single to the glory of God, you're going to be filled with light, right? But I think there's another way that this can be looked at in this context that we're talking about. The light of the body is the eye. So basically, your eye can illuminate what's going on inside of your body. And that is true. Your eyes are like a genetic map of your body. Most of the things in your eyes are not going to change. It's like a genetic map. It's just the layout of your body, whether certain areas are strong or whether they're weak. There are some things that can accumulate over time, but generally speaking, your eyes are not going to change much. They will change over time, but for example, if there was an area of weakness in the pancreas area, and somebody said, oh, go take these herbs or take these supplements and then come back to me, it's not going to heal up that area where I could say, oh, look, it's working, it's changing. They've learned that over the last 20 years or so, maybe 20, 30 years, because with the digital imaging that we can get of the eye, we can keep the conditions the same, we can keep the lighting the same, and we notice that there's not really much changing that's going on.
So if you have, say, a predisposition to something, even after you work on it and you do tend to heal it, you still have that predisposition in the eyes?
Yeah.
I have noticed though, when one of my kids, when we did a vaccine, his eyes chinged, and he has now one blue eye and one brown eye.
Oh, wow.
Serious?
He had two blue eyes, and so and now we know that he's allergic to the casing that was in the DT.
Did the eye turn brown? Was that on the side of the body that
Yeah.
he had the vaccine on?
Oh,
That's a
let me
good
look
question.
on that. I'll find out. But it's like if you lift his lid, this half's still blue, that half isn't.
Wow.
And
So it's
but
kind
it
of hard for
changed
him
around
to
the time he
repeat
got his
everybody,
detox.
so if you're gonna speak,
Oh, yes.
speak loud, because,
Okay.
yeah, we just constantly get complaints about interruptions and all that, and I want it to still be a discussion, but they actually really wanna hear you. I
So,
do too.
yeah, just
We
to
need a
clarify,
microphone.
What she was saying was her son, one of his eyes changed after vaccine, and that kind of goes back to what Henry Lindlar said here about it exposes what's going on with this drug poisoning.
Wow.
That's really what it
And the
is.
DTaP has casein protein in it, and he's allergic to casein now. So that's when it happened, when they did all those, it's like 6 months, I mean, not 6 months, 6 weeks, 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, all of those DTAPs, that's when his
And it
eyes
would be
changed.
really interesting to get pictures of like a before and after. I mean, obviously
Oh,
we
I
can't
could
go
find
back.
them. No, I could find
Oh,
pictures.
yeah, you've got pictures. And then we can get like a real big picture and,
You can see it in the blood work,
Yeah.
yeah,
for sure.
oh, yeah. So, generally speaking, though, there's not much that's going to change in the eyes as far as things getting better or like detoxing. That's not really going to change. But it is interesting to see what kind of genetic weaknesses come about. And they can come about from not just your immediate ancestors, but generations going back. You know, maybe your parents had a gene, but they didn't pass it on to you, or maybe they did, but it didn't show up with you, and then with your child it showed up, so things like that. Our ancestors, you know, they pass on their physical genetic information, but they also pass on the emotional genetic information, the thought pattern genetic information, and all of those things affect us on a physical level as well. So the emotions that are in our bodies or that we're experiencing, they actually have a physical component to them. And depending on how we either feed them or work through them and eliminate them, determines much of our physical health as well.
And I read that that's because we're water and water has memory. Is that?
Yeah. So
Is that could be that water is matter and it's memory?
yeah, there's a
you know?
lot of new information coming out about how water is what holds that information, emotions, memories,
Right.
things like that. And
Cool.
so there are also compounds called neuropeptides that will literally affect our immune system. They have a thought component to them. So the things that we think affect our immune system. So the thoughts we think, the emotions we feel, the foods we eat, the things we put into our bodies, all those things affect our physical health. And so that's why it's kind of hard to just say, oh, go take this medication and you'll feel better. Or go take this herb and you'll feel better. Because it really has to be all of it together to really get to the root cause. Is there a question over here?
Do we know how many generations back?
Do we know how many generations back? That's a great question. The Bible gives us a good indication.
4.
Yeah.
3 to 4.
Up to the 3rd or 4th generation.
Yeah.
That's my belief. That's what I've seen.
Because I got diabetes when I was 7,
Okay.
and on my father's side, it was on his mother's side that was the diabetes. So,
Okay.
that would have been 3 generations.
Okay.
They
Yeah.
said, I've heard something about up to 5 generations.
Yes. Typically, the person I learned from, 5 generations. After that, it gets pretty diluted. There's not really much. But
That's what DNC 123 says also, the creeds of the fathers, it has become the mainspring of all corruption. Even, it goes as far to say that about how certain generational things are passed.
yeah, in the book of Exodus, the Lord tells us that if we break the commandments, our posterity will be cursed until the 3rd and 4th generations. And that's another thing I'm not going to talk about today, but there are curses that we can bring upon ourselves by disobedience, and those can have physical health effects as well, depending on the nature of our disobedience. But that's for another whole presentation that we're working on, so maybe we'll do that now.
Well, you know, Isaiah says that baldness is a covenant curse.
Yes, I did.
Alma 46 is Moroni's title of liberty, and he talks about, for his faith, his family, and his freedom. The very last verse talks about plagues and herbs, and that they cured him with herbs. And I'm like, it's the same chapter. Isn't that the coolest thing?
Yeah.
I just have to tell you.
Yeah, in Alma 46 it talks about how that the roots were prepared to get to the cause of the
That's
disease.
right. That's what it says, to get to the cause. Yeah.
And I've seen in my own practice that herbs can have an emotional effect as well. There's certain herbs that can help with specific kinds of emotions. So, the way that we've kind of figured out how the eyes work is basically just through observation. You know, people say, I have this problem, I have this problem, then people will go, okay, well there's some problems in the, this one's kind of a messy chart. This was by a German iridologist called Joseph Angerer. This is kind of one of the early ones. I left out some of the early ones because they're a little bit, this is actually kind of hard to read. But this was by Dr. Bernard Jensen. He was a PhD in chiropractor who kind of brought iridology back into vogue in the United States in the 1950s, I believe, up until 1980s. This was his chart. As you can see, there's certain areas like the kidneys, the heart, the lungs, the liver, thyroid, all these different places they kind of mapped out based on their experience with working with people. And with each person who's kind of contributed to iridology, they've added upon. Now this is the chart from the man I learned from. His name is Dr. David Pesek. He was a psychologist, and his big contribution to iridology was the brain area. Up here at about 11 to 1 o'clock in both eyes. There are certain areas associated with the areas of the brain, and depending on where features show up, that can determine maybe certain types of weaknesses, thought patterns, emotions, things like that. And I'll kind of give an example of that a little bit later. But going back to some of the emotions, there are certain emotions that are attached with certain feelings, or there are emotions attached with certain organs. That's what I'm trying to say. So for example, the liver, the thyroid, the parathyroid, those are associated with the emotion of anger. Issues of forgiveness are often associated with the kidneys. That says colon, but that's not supposed to say colon. Grief and sadness are associated with the pancreas. Issues of letting go is associated with the colon. Fear. Let's see if I can point to these.
What are those?
These are the adrenal glands.
Oh.
These are supposed to be kidneys. And these are the adrenal glands. So those sit right on top of your kidneys, and those are associated with fear. When you get into that fight or flight response, you get kind of shaky, sweaty. That's coming from your adrenal glands. So all of these, most of the main organs have emotions that are associated with them. So by seeing a weakness in a physical area, we can then work on and say, well, what's the emotion attached to that? And
what was wrong with the colon? What was that?
Letting go.
Emotion?
issues of letting go.
Letting go. Okay.
Love to spend it.
Generally speaking, there's all kinds of emotions that can be associated based on what's going on with the colon, but generally speaking, it's issues of letting go, not being able to let go. Depending on which...
Question on,
Oh, yes.
like you were just saying,
Talk loud.
the left eye is feminine, the right eye is masculine.
Uh-huh.
What does that mean within the body?
I was just about to explain that.
That's great.
You're jumping ahead. It's right on. So, depending on which eye those weaknesses show up in, that can indicate a predisposition to certain feelings toward a primary feminine figure in your life or a primary masculine figure in your life. So, for example, well, I'll get into some examples to kind of illustrate how that plays out. If there is something in your eye, that doesn't mean that you have that issue currently. It doesn't mean that it's going to show up. It means that's a predisposition. It could. It's not fortune telling. I'm not going to say, ooh, you're going to have your kidneys go out on age 50 or whatever. That's
It's
not.
like epigenetics
Yeah.
the same way. It's
Yeah.
that you have a predisposition, but it doesn't mean it's gonna happen.
Right. And we are not our genes. We can change how our genes express themselves by the way we take care of ourselves, by the ways we think, we feel, and the way we eat. So, now there are three main types of eyes. Before I get into some of those examples, we'll kind of go over just some general things about the eyes. There's three main types of irises. There is the lymphatic iris. This is what you commonly see as blue or green. These are my daughter's eyes. They're super blue. It looks kind of white because her iris fibers, they're called trabeculas, they're really close together. See how dense those are? There's not a lot of separation.
That's a strong constitution, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right here, she's got a little weakness that's called a lacuna.
It's not showing, you're,
Yeah,
It's
I'll
like
do it.
it doesn't show up on that
I'll do
screen.
it with the mouse.
okay, there we go.
That's called a lacuna.
Oh.
That dark spot.
What?
It's a separation between the iris fibers. You can see them, they're still underneath. This is not very deep, so it's not as big of an issue. But it is there, and this is in her lung area, and she's had lung problems since she was born. She's 3 years old, and so we know that that's something we,
Could you point to it?
yeah.
Is it just on the left there?
See
right
the
here.
cursor?
Dark spot under the white.
Yeah.
Right in there. I've got some arrows on the next slides, just not on these couple. The next type of iris color is called a biliary iris. That's a mix between brown and blue. You kind of see it's brown, but it's not like this one.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot lighter.
Almost a greenish, too.
Yeah, this is what you kind of refer to as hazel, like a greenish brown.
But you can see blue in there, too.
Yeah. If you zoom in, there's usually areas where you can see the blue. Everybody in the world has blue eyes.
Wow.
Most people have the melanin pigment that's deposited on top. Get some water.
It's a dark pupil.
Okay, and the last type of iris is called hematogenic. And that is the true brown iris.
Would you say that again?
Hematogenic. And so just knowing which type of iris you are, or you have, you can kind of know some of the physical predispositions of that iris. So for example, the lymphatic iris, this is generally speaking, on average, doesn't mean you will have some of these weaknesses, but you may be prone to it. The lymphatic iris, irritation of the mucosal tissues, kidney issues, lymph congestion, an overacidic body state, arthritic and rheumatic issues, and even skin eruptions. So those are kind of the issues that go with the lymphatic iris, generally speaking. A biliary iris is often predisposed to digestive disturbances, liver and gallbladder issues, pancreatic insufficiencies, whether that's blood sugar or pancreatic enzymes. Also intestinal immune deficiency. There can be some issues there. Hematogenic is kind of similar. Yeah.
Can you just clarify, are you describing the color of the eye or the patterns within the eye?
So this is just what they've classified. You mean like the names?
Because I feel like I'm lymphatic, but I'm not blue. But,
Okay.
so I was just wondering, the patterns are also very different with all three
Yeah.
eyes. So
These
how
are
would we
just-
identify what we were?
These are just generally, like general.
Oh, they're just general?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like on average, people with these eyes will have these kind of
Okay.
issues.
Okay.
They've just kind of observed over time that people with these irises tend towards those things.
Okay.
Doesn't mean you will
Okay,
necessarily.
all right.
Great question though. Okay, so hematogenic, they're kind of predisposed to the same kind of liver and gallbladder issues. What's a little bit different with the hematogenic iris, though, is Issues with iron metabolism, that's pretty common.
Not breaking it down?
Yeah, either breaking it down with assimilation or its distribution, so things like that. Blood, serum, or glandular disorders, varicose veins, digestive disturbances, and arterial sclerosis. Those are some of the main general predispositions that people with these viruses have. Okay, so now we're going to talk about what it looks like on a practical level, kind of tying some of these things all together. So, first of all, this is my iris. Kind of strong, kind of not. I'm not too worried about it because it's me. But I will bring attention to a few things here that I have learned. This is a pancreas pigmentation on my adrenal area. So that would indicate a predisposition to pancreas insufficiency as well as adrenal weakness, which are things that I struggle with. More specifically with this kind of pigmentation, that indicates more of a digestive enzyme deficiency, which is something that I struggle with as well. Something that goes along with that is this right here is a little pancreas weakness. What makes it more serious is there's this primary blood vessel in the white part of the eye, the sclera, and it kind of comes and points right, it's right above that weakness right there. So whenever we see those primary blood vessels, it's usually the body saying, hey, this is a big deal. We need to do something about that. So our eyes will try to tell us, like, hey, this is what's wrong.
Did you just put a camera really close? How did you get?
So I've got a digital imaging iris camera. So
okay.
I've got a whole setup that you can stick your head on, and then we zoom the camera in and get a nice picture of it.
Okay.
So, yeah. It's a little bit hard to do it with the phone. That's how I tried doing it. And the pictures just don't look good. Because it's a blue light, the flash is a blue light, and I use a white or yellow light so that it gets the natural colors. Also right here, I don't know if you can see it, it's kind of like a straw yellow color. That's a kidney pigment. So I've got pancreas weakness, adrenal weakness, and kidney weakness. This is my left eye. So that would be emotions involving with the primary feminine figure. Some of these things can be passed on genetically. So if there was an issue with, let's say, your mother had an issue with her mother, she could have passed those things on to you as well, and those might show up in your eye as well. So it might not be that you have an issue with, I have an issue with my mother. I don't have an issue with my mother as far as these things are concerned. But that may be something that was passed on from either my mother or my father with primary feminine figure. And so then it's up to us to heal those genetic information that has been passed on to us. Here's that picture of my daughter that I had before, just showing that genetic lung weakness. Here's my other eye, my right side. I've got another, I didn't put this up there, but another primary blood vessel pointing to this area. This is also pancreas with a pancreas pigmentation, which is a little more serious when there's pigmentation and a genetic weakness in the area, and a primary blood vessel. My dad's a type 1 diabetic, so it kind of makes sense that my pancreas is not doing so well, because I believe when they detect type 1 diabetes, your pancreas is already like 90% gone. So he had that.
Does that mean maybe you're there's a chance you could have that, and
Yeah.
it's there. Okay.
So has he done his 23andMe to see if was it when he was a child? Was it, type 1 is usually juvenile.
No, he started having issues after his mission when he got vaccinated.
That's my nurse brother at age 50 got the H1N1 vaccine, anaphylactic reaction, now type 1 diabetic. It's vaccine injury. It's not juvenile. And you see right now COVID ads saying that juvenile diabetes or type 1 diabetes is now normal for adults. It's not.
Right. And, people will say the vaccine is changing people's genes, and that's true, but also everything changes your genes. We change our genes based on what we eat, what's in the air, what's in the water, for good or for bad. So our genes are constantly changing. So if we do something to our bodies, we put something in our bodies, and then we have children, that could be passed on to them. So those things do happen. So this, like I mentioned, was a GI tract weakness. This is called the collarette, right here.
It's Nancy.
And everything inside is the GI tract. So this is a pigmentation in my GI tract. I think I've got it.
Oh, wow.
Picture. You see those colors
Mm-hmm.
right in there? Those are a little more serious whenever pigmentation shows up inside the GI tract. So that's going to mean sluggish bowel movements. That's going to mean whatever color pigmentation that is. That's going to play a role. So this is either pancreas or kidney. It's like kind of in between yellow and orange. So I've got to do a lot more to support my body to make sure my bowels eliminate properly. So this is something that's likely been accumulated over time rather than something that's genetic for me.
Wouldn't that be harder to see in the hematogenic eye because
Yes.
it's all just dark anyway?
Yeah. Yeah. Brown eyes are a little bit harder to read because they usually have pretty strong constitutions and it's just brown. There's not a lot of weaknesses. And it depends on if it's a true brown iris, a hematogenic, or a biliary. If it's mixed. It's a little bit easier to see in biliary because you'll often get brown with some blue towards the outside edges. But yes, that is correct. It is harder to see. So like I've kind of already talked about, the structure of the eye and some of the colors, some of the time, they don't change very much. It takes a long time for things to change in the eye. It doesn't just happen really quickly. It can. There are certain things that do, such as traumatic events. For example, you can kind of see right here, see how my pupil is a little bit flattened right there? I was involved in a traumatic accident when I was about 13 or 14. I had a basketball hoop fall on top of my head in the pool, and it just smashed me into the water. So my head and my neck, and those kind of traumas will show up along the pupil. So this is reflective of the spine.
So the dark color around the pupil is from
No,
that?
you see how it's kind of flattened right there?
Yeah.
Slightly. So things like that will show up. I have seen an issue where somebody had a traumatic bowel, I don't even know what to call it. His bowel ruptured and it just like burst. And he had just like this dark brown stuff right here. And I was doing it for a friend, and she said, "Did you see where his bowel ruptured?" And I said, "Is it right here?" And she was like, "Yep, it was in the very last part of his colon, in the sigmoid colon, and that's where it showed up in his eye." And I was like, "Wow, that's incredible." So, yes and no. The eyes do change, but not much, and it's usually over time. So here's a few more interesting things. This is someone who had a spinal weakness, genetic weakness, in those areas. She also had that primary blood vessel pointing to it. When we were looking at her eyes, we thought that primary blood vessel was pointing to her pancreas, but the pancreas is a little bit more over here. There's a pancreas.
So so the location in the eye is the organs.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
So we're trying to figure out what this was. And there's pancreas weakness over here, and I thought that's a little bit too far away. It would be more like right here or right here if it was pancreas. But it's pointing right to the spine. And so this person was diagnosed with scoliosis when they were a child, but they don't have it anymore. It's not an issue. And she was born with these. These can be either genetic or acquired. She was born with this one. And so we started talking about it, and I thought, well, maybe it's emotional. And so I said, could it be that you don't feel supported by a primary masculine figure in your life? Maybe father? And she just burst out crying and was like, yes. My dad was a great dad, but I never felt connected to him. I didn't feel like he was there for me. I had a traumatic upbringing with my mom, and I didn't feel like he protected me from her. And it was just right there. Because this is her right eye. And so that was the emotion that corresponded to that. And so knowing that, she could then see, hey, I need to work through that. I need to do some more exploring there. I need to kind of go through that. So that's not going to change in her eye necessarily, but that will help her move past that. It's a sign that God gave to her so that she can move forward. So I thought that's pretty interesting. This is a lacuna. It's not very deep, so it's not a big deal. It's there, obviously,
What
but
do you
it's
mean
not
by
very
deep?
Is that color deep and
It's
tough?
shallow. It's pretty shallow. 'Cause You can see other iris fibers right beneath, right?
So if it were more dark,
Let me contrast. Yeah, you see that inside right there.
that's darker.
It's a little bit blurry on this big screen, but there's this other lacuna that's small and deep. Those are the ones that are more serious. When they're small and deep, those can present more of a problem than the ones that are big and shallow. So right there. This person also struggled with, this is in the ovary area. So you see there's another big one, not a big deal, but then there's another small one right there. This person struggled with hormone issues, just constantly having hormone problems. Used the birth control pill earlier in life, and that just did a number. So I created a hormone formula that helped detox and balance the hormones, working on the liver, the blood, and herbs that are specific for the female reproductive organs. And after that, she was doing great. Helped regulate her cycle, helped balance those emotions, and but that's just kind of an area of weakness that she'll have. And so for her, using that birth control pill really did a number because of that.
So just looking at that person, if they came up to you, would you say they're green-eyed or brown-eyed?
Yeah, green.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Greenish blue.
Yeah.
I already kind of talked about the colon, but I wanted to highlight it a little bit more for some different features in the eye. Right here is an ascending colon right here, kind of where it meets into the transverse colon right here. But this is a colon weakness. See how it looks like it wants to be closed right here, closed off, but it's kind of open and it kind of blows out. That's going to be a problem for digestion and elimination. Same with this right here. This is called a bowel pocket. It's just an area that's prone to inflammation, irritation, maybe even like a hole in the bowel there. And then right here, see how this collarette comes down and it looks like it touches the pupil and then comes out? That's a stricture in the small intestine. So this person had some pretty big bowel problems. He struggled with constipation all the time, and that was kind of his big thing. I also struggled with assimilation and digestion, and I mean, he's got a lot of finds there in his eye for that. So, okay, yeah. So this is a really interesting one. A lot of times people tell me their problems and then we can see it in the eyes, but oftentimes they don't tell me and I'm able to see it and then ask them if that's the problem. It's not like fortune telling or anything, it's just what's there in the eye. So this person came to me because she wanted to have me look at her eyes. I do a full report for people and kind of give them an overview of everything that's going on inside their bodies. And so we were doing that for her. We were also working with her to help her fix her diet and help her with some digestive issues. And a couple of things stood out to me when I looked in her eyes. So the first one was the adrenal weakness there at the bottom. It's pretty deep. It's really apparent. Obviously there's some other pigmentations going on, but that one was like the biggest genetic weakness that I could see. There's another one up here in the brain area, but that's kind of beside the point that I'm trying to make here. So this is her right eye. She's got this adrenal weakness. So I know two things. There's fear for the adrenals, and it's on the right side, so masculine. And then when I was looking at her brain area, I saw this weakness right up here. And that is in the sexual expression area of the brain. Whenever we see weaknesses there, that could mean a few things, whether that's not having any desire, having too much, possible sexual trauma. A lot of times when there's that, there has been sexual trauma, not that the trauma caused that, but it's something that just kind of is brought to you because of the ways your ancestors thought, the ways they felt, or curses they brought upon themselves. You know, I'm not one to say what the cause is. And so I saw that, and I said to her, is it possible that there's been some trauma in your life? Any kind of like sexual trauma? And she was like, oh my gosh, yes. I've never told anybody this. How did you know? And I said, it's right there in your eyes. And I said, is it possible that that trauma has brought on some fear and anxiety towards men? And she was like, yes, that is me to a T. And I knew that before even asking her. I didn't ask her because I wanted to be gentle with it. I didn't want to say that, oh yeah, I see here that you're this and this. That's not the right way to say something to someone. But her just expressing that helped her work through that. She was able to get it out to someone that she didn't know, but she trusted because I was helping her with all these things. And that was really big for her and her journey. Yeah.
So is something like that something that could be created? It's not something she was necessarily born with?
This is something that she was born with.
Or if she's born with it, does that, I guess what I'm asking, does it make her more susceptible to maybe having that type of experience?
Predisposition type?
It's a predisposition, experientially, too, which is kind of weird. We talk about, you've probably heard the law of attraction.
Really bring that onto us.
Yeah.
Right.
But if we're born with that, it's leaving that door open for that.
And it's what I've seen is oftentimes there's a history of that in the family. And so when there's those things in the eyes, it's usually because there's been history of it ancestrally. So that doesn't mean that it has to happen like with us necessarily or with our kids. We can put a stop to that by changing the way we think, changing the way we feel, and learning more things. Yeah.
After they get through it, then it changed their eyes?
After they get through it, does it change their eyes? No, it doesn't. It's kind of like when I say a map shows where you're going, but also where you've been, right? So it's kind of like, here's the map, and you get to navigate it.
When I first was studying this, I had read that your eyes do change. Like when my son that had the two different color eyes, they said that with proper nutrition, it would, you could change things.
Kind of heal it over and it would look stronger.
Yeah.
That was the belief for a long time. there were 2 American iridologists who really studied that, and once imaging cameras started getting a lot better, they really looked at that and then found that it doesn't change. Maybe on like a very, very, very small way, like very tiny way, but the biggest thing why people thought that was the lighting changes. Lighting can change so much about how things look. So usually when I do these pictures, I take light from the lateral side, so kind of this way, but then I also take a picture with the light medially, so that I get it from both angles. Because depending on where you shine the light, certain things will look darker. So this could look really dark from this angle, but when I shine it the other way, from light coming this side, it might not be as bad. So then I can look at both of those and kind of determine, okay, what's this weakness really look like? So that's a great question. The last one I want to talk about was pretty interesting. This was a girl who came to my wife and I wanting to get help with nutritionally. She was like, I've got all these digestive problems. I need help. Nobody can figure out what's going on with me. The doctors have done blood work. They say there's nothing wrong. They've checked me for all kinds of things and nothing's happening. I don't know what to do. And so we said, okay, well, let's get you in and look at your eyes. And so I took some pictures of her eyes. Right off the bat, I saw that there's some adrenal problems. You can tell that by how dilated her pupil is. And that's usually when people feel overwhelmed and really stressed out.
You're in the headlights kind of thing?
Yep. The other thing I saw was there was a liver pigment in the liver area. This is a kind of a brown pigment, and this is the liver area right here. And so I saw that, and that's a pretty serious problem when there's pigment in the area that the pigment corresponds with. And I said, okay, it looks like your liver is in a pretty bad spot. This is most likely accumulated because there's lots of other pigments as well. It could be some genetic as well. We don't really know. So let's have you start supporting your liver. And she was having all kinds of problems when she came to us. Pain in her stomach, bloating, indigestion, all kinds of stuff. And she tried tons of things and nothing was working. So we had her start working on her liver. Her liver is one of the main detoxifying organs in the body. So she started working on her liver, and we just had a call with her the other day, and she was like, I felt so good when I was using that, this liver herb that we gave her. And she was like, I didn't have any bloating, I didn't have any stomach pains, I didn't have all these issues. And then I ran out, and now I've got all those problems again. And so we said, well, that's something that you may need to be on for a while. We're not sure how bad this condition is that you're in, what state your liver's in. We know there's a problem there, but it's kind of up to you to gauge that. So go on this for a while, see how you do, and then go off it for a little while, see what happens. And then over time, we believe that you don't need to be on that long term. Once you heal something up, it should be good. It may come back, but that's something that you can work on moving forward.
What herb is that is detoxifying?
For the liver,
Uh-huh.
dandelion root is one of the best, but this was a combination of barberry, Oregon grape, wild yam.
Any milk thistle in it?
But that is a great one. Yeah.
I slept, I got one of those pillows that you've seen cure hand and memory foam. It's polyurethane, and I just went to the doctor for a normal test for, a yearly exam, and he said I had a fatty liver, and said, do you drink alcohol? I'm like, no. And so he gave me milk thistle, and then I had to come in every 2 weeks and do blood work, and then saw my liver heal. But I'm allergic to polyurethane. It's stinky and smelly, yeah.
Yeah, that off-gassing can be a big deal. So that's the power of what we can see in the eyes. I truly believe that God created our eyes, and our eyes are there to help us. Obviously they help us see, but they also help us to understand what's going on inside. a lot of people will say, oh, iridology, that's occultic, that's part of the new age, that's this and that, because it's not a mainstream medical doctor thing. But God created our eyes. He didn't create synthetic chemicals. We created those things. I believe that we should use the things that God created, because He knows way more than we do. We're not going to catch up to Him anytime soon in what we know about how our bodies work, how chemicals work in compounds, and how the interactions work. But I believe that He does. And when we use those things, we can change how our genes show themselves, our gene expression. We've talked about this already, that we can change our gene expressions by what we put in our bodies, the way we think, and the way we feel, for good or for bad. So if we're having those negative thoughts, that's going to affect us physically. If we're feeling those, or if we're harboring those emotions that we're not working through and getting out, it's going to affect us physically. So that's my overall message, is that you can change your gene expression today just by how you think, how you feel, how you love, and what you put in your body.
I have a doctor that you might want to look up with eyes. He was a brain surgeon, Dr. Jack Kruse, Kruse, and he was poisoned like I was with an antibiotic called Levaquin, which is fluoride, and he's gone into quantum physics, and he says to heal, we're beings of light. And so we have to be careful with that blue light with our eyes, and that can also affect your immune system. And he said to watch sunrises and sunsets, that it actually, sunlight feeds our DNA and can heal our mitochondria. And that's what's so sad about the pandemic, is they wouldn't let us, they were saying no sun, but we're beings of light. But his main quantum physics stuff, I could never, he wrote really too detailed for me, but he was healing himself he said you could even, if you were, let's say we're in a famine and we're starving, you can actually feed your body and stay alive if you have water, but if you looked at the sun, rise or sunset, it actually has food for our bodies. And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The sun is good.
Mm-hmm.
It helps with your circadian rhythm too.
Mm-hmm.
Helps get your hormones regulating correctly so you can go to sleep and then wake up.
So he was talking too about making sure that you put your phone on a blue light, mode, or wearing blue light glasses if you're on the computer a lot.
Yeah, blue light glasses.
Because it can really affect your expression of your genes.
Yeah. There's so many things that affect how we live, and I think people are now starting to understand that, because for so long it was just follow what they tell you to do, and they have no idea what to do.
Nope.
People who lived before us knew what to do, but now we don't. So, if you are interested in knowing more about your eyes, I already mentioned we do comprehensive iris analysis reports, and here's some more information about that. Yeah?
I'm just wondering if, like if my kids, I have an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old, my two youngest, and they both complain a lot about, oh, my stomach hurts, or I'm not hungry, or that I don't have like digestive issues. If they're that young, can you see problems in them at that age? Like when they get older, their eyes will look worse than they do because they're older, more junk builds up throughout their life. Is it better to do it when they're young to see like past generational things more easily than their own personal things they've been building up?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay? Like I've looked at my kids' eyes. I have pictures of my kids' eyes. They're really hard to get pictures of because they're 5 and 3. So they're looking all over. Okay, ready, now. So I had to snap the picture real quick. But yes, I have seen, like with my kids, there are certain things that we've been able to work on and help support with them, because they had issues where like, I don't know what's going on with them. We need to figure this out. And so it has been really helpful for them to know some of those things. And that can actually serve as a baseline. And if you want to do it later when they're older, it might not be with me, but with somebody else, you can get pictures of their eyes and then see how they change. I think that would be really cool. That's why I want to get pictures of my kids' eyes when they're young, so that I can see how they change. Because most of the people who are coming to me are they're older. They're in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, until their 80s, and the eyes aren't going to change as much during those times. But yeah, In younger years, it's a really good time.
So that sort of that straight part shows trauma. What I was saying, I got
The straight part that shows trauma in my iris, yeah.
Yeah, I guess there's a predisposition to diabetes, but my diabetes started a few months after my little sister died. And
The trauma triggers it.
And so I never thought of that as trauma until someone a few years ago was talking to me about the mourning process. And
You know what's interesting? The pancreas is associated with grief.
Yeah, I said, we said that, I'm like, oh yeah, that's pretty clear, Mom, that's you right there. Around sadness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I still, someone who does energy said, you have sadness. And I'm working on that, healing, like when I was praying and the Lord just showed me, just peeling back my first few years and light shining in.
Yeah.
So I'm in that process. But, so with that, would there necessarily be that sort of straight part there, or is that?
Probably
I mean,
not.
it's trauma.
There may have been a genetic predisposition in the pancreas area, and then with that grief, that probably was a catalyst to activate it, because the grief will affect the pancreas, and so if there's already weakness there, and that grief comes in, that can really, do it on a physical level.
Yeah, because it was just, she died in December of 50, and my symptoms started the next summer. And it was fine after 4 doctors. It was found out what I had.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
So have you been able to tell if there's anything connected with like a time frame or a time clock?
If I've been able to tell if there's anything like with a time frame or time clock, it just
And affecting a person's health, or does it just show up as a map, like it's here?
Yeah, it's usually just a map. There are there are other iridologists who will try and put a time on it. I'm not one of those. I don't try to get into the metaphysical fortune telling kind of thing, but if that works for other people, yeah. That's not really something that I do. It's not really something that the eye tells necessarily. Some people will say that if it's, how far away it is from the, let me pull it up. How far away it is from the collarette right here, that determines it. I think that's where some of that comes in. But we've kind of figured that along the collarette are a lot of endocrine glands. So for example, let me see if I can pull up my eye that I had up here.
With your eye, you had the brown around your eye, so was that genetically a brown around there?
Oh, this right here?
Yeah.
No, that is the gastric ring of the pupil, or of the stomach. This is actually pretty healthy. It should be like a reddish brown color.
It should be.
Yeah, if it's black, that usually indicates under acidity in the stomach. But what I was going to say about the endocrine system, maybe it's not on this one. Yeah, right here. You see this right here? That's a genetic heart weakness right there. So that's all along the collarette. So I wouldn't be able to see like a heart weakness out here or anything. It's not going to tell. Like if I'm going to get it when I'm older in life, because the heart is just right here toward the outside edge. So yeah, with some of the COVID stuff that's gone on, I get those kind of heart palpitations because I've got that weakness right there.
You get heart palpitations?
Yeah, I didn't get the shot, but other people did. When I get around them, I get those.
See, that's
The shedding?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why I did the hydrogen peroxide IVs.
So cayenne and hawthorn, those are the top 2 herbs for heart. Cayenne and hawthorn. Hawthorn berry.
Hawthorn's really good for heart.
Yeah, they're both tonics, so it'll help the heart increase its action if that's what it needs, or it'll help slow it down if that's what it needs. So. Okay, any other questions?
All I've heard is, well, not all from doctors, statins, had my heart checked, and there's some plaque, and I'm supposed to be taking statins, and I've just felt much.
Chelation.
Is there any time when,
Even IV
when they would be okay to take?
For me personally, no, I wouldn't. I do other things. There are other things that can
Okay, that's what I.
help with that I would do. I would do cayenne. I do 1 teaspoon in water 3 times a day. That's a lot of cayenne. It's going to be pretty spicy, but that will clean out the arteries better than almost anything else.
Fast?
Yeah.
The plaque. It cleans the plaque out.
Cayenne.
So that would help the whole circulation.
Oh yeah,
So do you
absolutely.
think, because I've got the same thing, I had angioplasty
Okay.
back in March, just help
Yeah.
clean out.
I would start out small, so like a 1/4 teaspoon, and then work up to 1 teaspoon 3 times a day. So 1/4 teaspoon 3 times a day, and then gradually increase over a period of time.
Like cayenne herb.
How do you take
Cayenne pepper.
Cayenne pepper.
It's gotta be
cayenne
easy
pepper.
and
You can take it
then.
in capsules
Yeah.
if you don't like to keep it.
So I have,
It's not very much to put a little torque.
I don't do
It's just-
capsules because I get heartburn sometimes when I take the capsules, and because it opens, it'll start dissolving in your
But you have
throat.
to eat it with food.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Yeah,
Yes.
you really get heartburn if you
Don't do
eat it.
cayenne on an empty stomach. It'll get you.
I've taken, Dr. Christopher's intestinal formula number 1 and 2 is the same as Dr. Schultz's, because he studied under him. And they always have cayenne pepper. And I've had to do that because I had my appendix taken out and I couldn't, digest my food well. But it's got cayenne already in it, so I guess it does everything then.
Yeah.
Huh?
Cayenne is one of the best herbs that you can use.
Really?
Yeah.
So just in the water, pinch your nose and swig it fast. 8
It's good with
ounces.
honey and lemon too for throat stuff.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the Japanese stuff, they do that? They
Fresh
use
lemon.
cayenne, fresh, and then they use honey, and yeah, if you ever had a cough, and they would bring it over to you. Yeah.
I used to take it before my voice lessons and it always cleared me up.
Yeah.
As a teenager.
Cayenne.
My sister had her gallbladder taken out, is that right? Yeah. Is there anything that you recommend? And she's pretty good at taking care of herself for the most part, tries to avoid greasy food especially. Is there anything that you recommend that she would take on a regular basis to help
Yeah.
digestion or whatever it is that isn't there anymore with the gallbladder being gone?
So with the gallbladder, what I've seen with a lot of people who've had their gallbladder removed, the best thing that they have noticed as far as diet is concerned is lots of fruit and lots of raw vegetables, because the gallbladder helps with processing fat, and that's any kind of fat. It's not just like the oils and the even plant fats. Animal fats particularly are really hard to digest without a gallbladder. So those things are really helpful, lots of fruit, lots of vegetables. And then Dr. Christopher's liver and gallbladder, I think the main component is barberry or Oregon grape. Those things help stimulate bile. Obviously the gallbladder's not there, but the liver will help take over its role, basically. And that will help push things through.
Is any fruits and vegetables, are there particular ones that are better than others?
High water content are really
Like
good.
watermelon?
Watermelon, oranges, apples, pears, plums, peaches, nectarines, those kind of things.
So not bananas?
Bananas are still good.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
bananas.
I really like bananas. So.
My gastroenterologist saw a gallstone in my gallbladder. He says it's not irritating or aggravating it, but how do I get rid of it naturally?
I would do Dr. Christopher's liver and gallbladder. We had someone come to us who had 14 gallstones in her gallbladder. She came to us because she's like, help, I don't know what to do. What should I do? And we said, well, we can't tell you what to do, but here's what we would do. And so she started doing that. She started taking Dr. Christopher's liver and gallbladder formula. And she came back to us in 2 or 3 weeks. And she was like, I went back to the doctor and I only had 1 or 2 gallstones. And they said, wow, whatever you're doing, keep doing it, and we'll check on you in a few weeks and see how you're going. And so a few weeks went by and she went back and they were all gone.
Thank you.
So,
Have you heard of the recipe with the olive oil and, you can take it, like my grandmother got rid of them every single time. She passed them.
yeah,
naturally.
olive oil's usually one that people use as well.
Well, I think it's
To
olive oil,
lubricate.
vinegar, but I don't want to say it, I'll find it out from my mom
Okay.
said it passes her cancer.
Yeah, I'm not sure of that recipe, but I do know people who have used olive oil. But yeah.
How about kidney stones?
Kidney stones. There was a time where I thought I had kidney stone.
My husband has had them in the past.
Okay.
It's like sick of the dog.
I started describing some pain in my back to my wife because she had chronic kidney stones growing up. And she was like, "Oh, you have a kidney stone. We need to hit this hard." And I was like, "Okay." So I started doing some things. Gravel root was one herb that they tell you not to use now, but that was historically used for kidney stones. And so I made a really strong tea of gravel root, and I drank it, and I still had the pain. And then I was like, wait a second, I think it's just muscular. It was muscular, it wasn't a kidney stone. But if I had a kidney stone, that would have been great. So gravel root's a really good one. Juniper berry is another really good one. And parsley root is a really good one. Parsley root's probably the best. It's really mild, but if you make a strong tea of it, about a quart or two a day will help with that. Juniper's another good one. The other one I was thinking of, hydrangea root will help dissolve stones. Yeah.
It dissolves it? Or
It'll help
helps
dissolve
pass out?
it. Yeah.
It helps
It'll help dissolve it. The juniper and the parsley root, juniper berry and parsley root are more for the kidneys in general. They'll help detoxify, which is part of it. But the hydrangea root will help dissolve it. A really easy solution is Dr. Christopher's kidney formula. It's just you can get those in capsules and do that. I'd probably do like 3 capsules 2 or 3 times a day.
My husband's sister has a variety of health issues. And so they both had kidney stones. And she said when passing a kidney stone was more painful than giving birth. I was like, ooh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, my brother-in-law had them.
Okay, any other questions for me?
So you were this comprehensive. Do you have an office, or is it your
Yeah, we've got an
home?
office. If you go to the website, you can book a time, and we've got our office on there. It's just in American Fork.
Oh.
Right off the freeway. So.
So the name of your
Go back
website
to
is
healthsaves.org.
Thank you.
Right. I live in American Fork too, in Pensacola, where you're at, right at the freeway.
It's in that by Doug Smith. It's across the street in that office park.
By across from Olive Garden?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And with that website, you can order the herbs that you sell too.
Yep.
Because I bought the herb.
Right there on-
herbal ivermectin
Yeah.
off that website.
We're coming out with a new
people
herbal
that are
line
reporting.
soon.
So you're talking the American Fork closed, I mean, right there, the Pioneer Crossing where you... Okay, and the Olive Garden. Oh, that's close. Yeah.
We're also coming out with an herbal line here pretty soon. It's going to be called Bless My Kidneys or Liver or Gallbladder. And the idea behind that is, in the Bible, it tells us in Proverbs that life and death is in our tongue. So whatever we speak, we can either bless ourselves or we can curse ourselves. So our idea was, let's put that as the name of an herbal formula so that you get it physically and you get it emotionally and on a thought, speaking it into existence level. So that'll be coming soon.
Awesome. Anybody else have any questions?
Let's see.
Thanks.
Do you have something to cure immaturity?
Immaturity.
I'm trying to get over that one.
I don't have anything for that. Working on that too
That's
sometimes.
supposed to help you stay young,
Right? We can go too far first.
You don't have a God please change his mind for me or
Not quite. I do have a male hormone balancing formula.
I do have, like, when I had I had a reaction to a blood thinner during a DNC, and then when I was rushed to the hospital, I had a blood clot hit my lung, And so they did everything in the hospital. They said I had polyps in my gallbladder, which could be cancer. And my brother had his gallbladder removed, and when I called him, he's like, you don't want to do it where I was at. Come to Utah. I know a good doctor, because if they do the surgery wrong, you can have a dumping syndrome. So I went online and started studying hydrochloric acid. I didn't even know what it is, but it said it could dissolve polyps. So I started taking that, but you have to take it with food. Started taking that, and then when I came to Utah and they did my ultrasound, I didn't have any more polyps. What is hydrochloric acid? Do you guys know?
So hydrochloric acid is what your body produces to break down your foods in your stomach. One of the things, it really just breaks down things.
So maybe because I didn't have my appendix, I don't have enough of that?
I don't think the appendix is associated with that, but a lot of people can be predisposed to that. Okay. One of the problems that we have now in our modern society is that we put all kinds of things in our bodies that aren't natural, they're not organic, so they're not the way our Creator intended. Because our Creator created our bodies, and then He created certain inputs for our bodies. But then we went and said, let's take out all this stuff from these inputs, let's put in these other things, but that's not how our bodies are supposed to work. And so we're putting in these non-natural things into our bodies, and that throws off all kinds of systems. And one of those is the ability of our stomach to produce hydrochloric acid. So things like antacids, those actually decrease your hydrochloric acid, which can cause heartburn, because your body's like, hey, we need more of this, and you're telling it no. Or when people take excuse me, things like hydrochloric acid, sometimes that can affect it, because then you're telling your body, hey, I'm going to do this for you, so you don't need to.
So stop making it.
And so then you kind of become reliant on it and have to do it over and over. But cayenne, like we mentioned, is one of the best things to stimulate the body to produce its own.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Another good cayenne.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cayenne's great.
Okay. Questions? I've heard on various ads on my phone and things, don't exercise, don't overdo, trying to lose weight kind of things, to eat like fat-burning foods, like turmeric or various things, whatever. Does that work? Are there certain herbs and things that really do like ignite your extra fat and bite, you melt it and go away kind of thing? I see pills and ads for something like
Okay, so the question is, are there certain foods or herbs that will kind of help lose weight?
Yes.
Yes and no. There are certain things that will stimulate your appetite, kind of get the engine going in your body to kind of burn more calories. So fenugreek is one that will kind of stimulate your appetite.
Fenugreek?
Fenugreek seed.
Is that it's an herb?
Yeah, it's an herb and it's a food. It's used in a lot of Indian dishes. It's really good for female issues in general.
Like turmeric-ish kind of stuff? The Indians eat a lot of turmeric.
It smells like maple. It doesn't taste like maple though. It's kind of bitter, so it's good for the liver. It's good for the stomach. It's good for balancing hormones. And that's a lot of times where the issue is with weight things, is sometimes there's a hormonal component with either the thyroid or...
He was always thin, trim growing up, and now he's 51 now, and he's a mailman, so he's kind of, he's up early in the morning, he's moving a lot, but he's still like he's gaining weight more, but he's not really exercising much, like foot injury and stuff he's had in the past. So I feel bad for him. Like I know how to help him to not be getting bigger.
Yeah. Fenugreek might help with that to kind of stimulate more of an appetite. The idea is the more of an appetite you have, the more as long as you don't go up and fill that appetite, if you're just eating like you normally do, you're going to lose weight.
Okay. He doesn't eat much because he's not delivering. And he's like, I'm too slow to stop and eat lunch, so he just maybe eat breakfast in the morning, eat like a sandwich on the way to delivering, then he doesn't eat again until he gets home later.
Yeah. I'd maybe look into, there's something called B3 blood flow resistance bands. They're things that you can put on your arms and on your legs, and what it does is it creates venous occlusion, so it kind of closes up, and your body runs on oxygen. It burns oxygen. But then when you put these on, your body switches and starts burning glycogen. That leads to more rapid weight loss. So you get the same effect as if you're working out really hard, but you don't have to work out as hard.
Oh,
That
Where do we
makes
sign up for that?
What's her name? Amy. Amy, yeah, Amy had those.
B3
We
Sciences.
B3
B3sciences.com, I think is their
Yeah.
website.
B3
Yeah.
Sciences.
Yeah, she had those when we went to Egypt, and she put them on, and it would,
Yeah.
it was like, but it was supposed to be like simulating exercise, but I didn't know it had to do with
Because it
B3.
stresses your blood flow.
Yeah.
She did not say anything about B3. Yeah.
It's kind of like it's
Because I
tricking
looked
your
at
body
B3 and I
into
couldn't
thinking-
find it, because I'm really into MTHFR gene mutation, and I could not find anything about B3. There's no information about that vitamin, and so I didn't understand it. Yeah.
It's not a vitamin.
Yeah. Now I know it's not a vitamin. It's a band. Because I'm like, what? Yeah.
Did you have something, Janet?
Yes, I do have a comment and a question. I've done intermittent fasting for a long time, 14 to 16 hours overnight, but I was having maybe two snacks at a meal or 2 meals and a snack a day. When I cut it down religiously to eating twice a day only and no snacks, my blood sugar went like this, just leveled out, and I'm able to maintain my weight and lose a lot easier. And I just had my wellness visit. My total cholesterol reading was lower than it's ever been at 177, and I've always had a good balance between HDL and LDL. It's been bang on normal, the ratio, but getting that cholesterol down, I think I can attribute it to doing that.
Okay, yeah. That's another
So
good
just a tip for people, if you,
tip.
you know, everybody's different, you have to decide what's going to work for your body. But what I'm finding is, I'm hungry for an hour or two, but on a low grade level of hungry before I eat. So I figure I'm digesting things like plaque in my arteries, getting rid of sludge because my body's hungry, it's burning up that stuff.
Yeah.
And it just feels healthier. So, have you heard anything like that?
Yes, absolutely. Intermittent fasting is really good. Our bodies should not be eating all the time. And then sticking to meals rather than snacking really helps our bodies to clean themselves. Because our energy, here's another interesting thing. Our bodies can use their energy to either digest or process emotions and detoxify.
Ooh.
So when we eat lots of constipating foods, it's usually because we're trying to numb those emotions. We don't want to feel them. Because when my wife and I, when we work with people, we often have them go to an all raw fruit diet, fruit or vegetables diet. And what happens sometimes is these people will get really, really emotional because they're no longer numbing their feelings. They're no longer suppressing them, and so they have to feel them. And so that's what happens when we eat really constipating foods, is our liver will take a heavy load to try and digest that and process it and eliminate it. But when we don't, we can work on our emotions, we can work on detoxifying, we can work on getting rid of the bad things in our bodies other than just our food.
Is that why comfort foods are usually fattening things?
Yes. It's a larger digestive load that's placed on the body.
So are you vegetarian?
I don't like to say vegetarian or vegan, but we try to focus on eating whole plant foods.
And you don't eat meats?
Unless I had to.
Because they're alive, they have enzymes. I was just saying that in Asia, and she said also in Italy that, right?
No, I didn't say that.
Oh, what was that? Which Greece? You said Greece.
I was talking about something else. It wasn't a country.
But in Asia, they finish their meal with a fruit.
Right, France does the same.
I know
Yeah.
Taiwan does, Japan does.
Well, Italy, yeah, too. So does maca help with hormonal balance as well?
Yeah. Yeah, maca's a good one.
Okay. Any other hormonal balancing?
Vitex is really good for women.
Vitex?
Yeah, chased tree berry.
Yes, I took that. And if you're not ovulating, and you can get pregnant with Vitex.
Vitex is amazing. It's not for men.
No.
Not at all.
Can I make a plug
Yeah.
for animal protein that comes from grass-fed animals, fed cleanly?
Sure.
I've got weak adrenals and weak thyroid. Nutritional people have said you need to be eating animal protein. So, and I do much better. I tried a vegetarian/vegan diet for one summer when I was teaching, and it made me ill. And when I went back on animal proteins, it made me ill. So I think everyone's a little different.
Sure.
I wouldn't make a recommendation either way. But the ratio of omega-3s and omega fats in grass-fed protein is triple the omega-3s and a third of the omega-6s, which is the balance we want to have. We get too many omega-6s in our processed diet and not enough omega-3s. And omega-3s come from greens and grass and plants. So it's a different food if you
Yeah.
eat the really healthy meats. It's worth, I pay $7 a dozen for Vital Farms organic eggs from Texas, and they're wonderful.
Yeah, the eggs are way different.
Way different.
They're
And I
better.
buy the grass-fed beef, and I try to get it from the producers. So just another point of view that there's, and some people do much better on a more vegetarian diet also.
So what is your take on organic? Because I know there's a lot of hype about organic and it's not
There's also
really
a lot of facts
organic.
about it.
They're charging a lot of money for it because it's a big money maker.
Right.
But then, I mean, going back to your home gardens and all that, I absolutely know those have more nutrition and you can kind of help with that.
So we always talk to people about knowing where your food is coming from is more important than what's on the label. So like certified organic is a joke because they still get to spray pesticides on it up to a certain level. Maybe not the same chemicals as in conventional or GMO, but you're still getting pesticides. So what my wife and I do is we try to find local farmers that we know. We can talk to them. We can say, hey, what do you spray on your food? And if they say, oh yeah, we just spray normal pesticides, and we're like, sorry, we're not buying from you. We usually try to go to people who are only using cayenne pepper, diatomaceous earth, and natural things like that.
So where do you find those people locally? Because I've only been here for
Farmers
2 years.
markets.
Okay, so all
There's
right,
one
I've
in
never seen
Provo,
those. Okay.
Saturday mornings. There's also one in Springville. I think they do it on Thursday. There might be one in
Monday.
Linden on Thursday. Or yeah, it's Monday.
Is Provo the one
Linden
by
is Thursday.
the football stadium? Is that where they do that?
No, there is one there, but this one is right off Center Street.
Oh,
Center Street, Fifth West, right?
Yeah.
Provo.
Do
Well, they have
most
the-
people locally not use a bunch of pesticides?
Not everybody, but there are certain.
Talk to them.
Yeah, you should talk
Like
to
those
them.
stands that come to we sell corn and peaches here. This is pretty safe.
I think they do spray their corn. I don't think about some of their other fruits.
The Harvard Farms.
Yeah, Harvard Farms,
That's a good
I know they spray their corn.
Did Thanksgiving
It's a good
Point
way
used
to
to
ask
have
the question.
So this is what I've asked at farmers markets. You don't say, are you organic? Okay, a lot of them won't understand. You say, tell me how you feed your soil and build your soil and how do you control pests?
Yeah.
Oh, just the usual way. Okay, bye.
We say, what do you spray on your foods? And they'll be like, oh, this is what we use. And we're like, okay, thanks. See ya. So, yeah, that's a great way. Okay, I think we'll wrap it up there.
Thank you. Thank you.